Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to day two, session two of our webinar series, which is brought to you by Spark Group in association with Scope T&M Private Limited. Those who are joining for the first time today, let me introduce myself. My name is Balasaheb Doifode. I am CEO Scope T&M Private Limited. I am sure all of you and your near and dear ones are safe and sound because these are uncertain times and health has to be our first priority. Friends, this particular webinar series that we are conducting on different measurements, I once again would like to express my gratitude to Mr. P.K. Patnaik for creating this platform of Spark Group so that we as industry colleagues can come together, interact, share and assimilate our knowledge. I believe Mr. Patnaik sir was supposed to join today. So if you are there, sir, thank you very much. It's a great work that you had done. Talking about today's session, today we are going to talk about dynamic contact resistance measurement, one of the most important and comprehensive measurement when it comes to the health assessment of circuit breakers, especially the HV and EHV circuit breakers. When we talk about this particular measurement in detail in a session that will precede, I would like to share a few anecdotes with you as far as the little bit of a history of circuit breaker testing is concerned. Friends, we all are aware how important is circuit breaker as a component in our power system. It has the most important task of isolating the faults in the event of faults, and not only isolate the faults, but do that activity in a time-bound manner. So it's a time-critical activity. When we look at the testing history of a circuit breaker, the operation times was the first measurement that was being done on circuit breakers. Initially, there used to be ultraviolet based, drum type recorders, which were used for measuring the operation time of the circuit breakers. There used to be a long paper that used to come out of the machine, and there was a needle, like what you see your ECG. That way, there was a needle which was creating a graph on that, and that is how people used to measure the time between the two divisions, and that is how the operation time was measured. Then came one of the instrument, as we can call it. It was made by, I believe, a company called as FAVAC, and these were called as a FAVAC timers. Improvised version of those UV type drum, UV based drum type recorders. And these FAVAC timers were being used. I still remember, BBMB was one customer where I had seen this FAVAC timer that was being used. But these were, the old type of non-electronic kind of products. With the advent of electronics, practically occupied every sphere of our life. And that is where the new generation product like circuit breaker operation timer took the birth. Of course, when you talk about the India, Scope was the company which developed the circuit breaker time interval meter. Initially, we developed it for a breaker manufacturer, and then it was tried in a switch yard. And when we burnt our first timer in a switch yard, that is when we understood that there is something called as a induction, which is not there on a shop floor, but is available in a substation. And that is when the techniques of isolating this induction were worked upon, and slowly we became successful in making this electronics, which works on typically 5-volt, work in a substation environment of a EHV class substation. where the induced voltages can run into kilovolts. So these were the circuit breaker timers, which were the initial breed of circuit breaker testing, mainly used for the operation times of the circuit breakers, like closing time, close open time, and also the CO time, that is close open time. Then somewhere in the early 90s or late 80s came the circuit breaker operation analyzers. And these analyzers gave us the opportunity to go a little bit deeper and understand that if the circuit breaker is taking more time, what is the reason for that? So analyzer could look at different components of a circuit breaker and look at the performance of those individual components of the circuit breaker. So we started recording the coil currents, auxiliary contact switching statuses. Then came the travel measurement, and we started recording the travels. And then we could have a complete picture of the operating mechanism. And since all these measurements are taken on a common time scale, we could correlate these events when they are happening in a circuit breaker, when circuit breaker operates. And then we could pinpoint what is the reason of this particular delay in the operation time. Is it because the coil is taking more time to get magnetized enough to displace the plunger? Or is the operating mechanism sluggish? Or there are certain issues related to maybe beyond the operating mechanism, like linkages and the contacts. When we talk about the travel measurement, there was one challenge there, and that challenge was to develop the transducer which can convert that displacement of a millimeter into some sort of electrical signal that can be captured by an instrument. But more than the transducer, it was the fixture which was more critical. Because in a circuit breaker, the motion that we need to tap for calculating or for measuring a travel can be a linear motion or a rotary motion. So you need either a linear transducer or a rotary transducer. Similar way, the strokes of the operating mechanism or the travel of the contacts can be different. So depending on the stroke of the operating mechanism, you need to choose the suitable length of the travel transducer. If you go for a VCB, for example, your travel is hardly 7 mm or 8 mm. But if you go for a EHV class circuit breaker, your travel can be, say, 250 or 200 millimeters. So you need to choose a suitable length so that you get a proper resolution of the measurement. But then this transducer was one aspect. The other aspect was the fixture. The breaker manufacturer has given the access to this mechanism in a different way in different circuit breakers. So depending on the way the axis is available, depending on whether it's a rotary or a linear motion that we are tapping, we need to make a customized fixture which will hold that transducer rigidly near that circuit breaker, because when breaker operates, the speeds are pretty high. In case of tripping operation, the speed can go as high as 8 or 10 meters per second. So these are high-speed operations. And that is where the fixture has to hold the transducer rigidly without allowing the vibrations or without allowing the damage to the transducer, which in itself is a relatively delicate component. So with all these experiences, the travel measurement got stabilized, and then we could look more into the circuit breaker. But there was one aspect of circuit breaker that we were still not getting a visibility, and that was what is happening inside the interrupter. What is the condition of the main contacts and arcing contacts? Only when we could open the circuit breaker for overall, we could see what is the condition of these contacts. Even with the travel measurement, what we are doing was basically look at the operating mechanism level parameters and not at the contact level. From operating mechanism, there are operational linkages, and then you have the contacts. So that was one area which was hitherto hidden. And that is where somewhere in, I think, the 90 or 91, when PowerGrid decided that they would like to implement the dynamic contact distance measurement. At that time, Scope had the circuit breaker analyzer HiSAT 2406, and it was pretty popular, being widely used. So it was PowerGrid who said that we know you have a capability of developing an instrument for this dynamic contact distance measurement, and we want to implement this measurement in India. And that is where we took that challenge, and it was more of a collaborative effort that we developed this dynamic contact distance measurement, or a meter or an instrument for that. Now, DCRM turned out to be such a useful measurement that in India we had saved number of EHV class circuit breakers because of the DCRM measurement, because of we able to assess the condition of the contacts without physically opening the interrupter. And friends, let me tell you that today India, especially the PowerGrid as a utility, has the largest experience in world when it comes to DCRM measurement. And Scope is having a fortune of being a company having the largest experience when it comes to the product development and product usage as far as the DCRM measurement is concerned. And since this measurement came onto the horizon, since then this has become one of the most routine measurement. All other state utilities are following that. The utilities are asking for the breaker manufacturers to give the DCRM signature at the time of factory test. So in short, this has become a pretty routine measurement now. So this has been the journey of the circuit breaker testing, right from ultraviolet based drum type recorders to just assess or gauge the operation times, to currently the DCRM level where we can practically see what's happening inside the interrupter. So pretty exciting. I will not reveal everything because my colleague Nilay, who is going to conduct this session, has a lot of exciting things stored for you. Once again, we are extremely grateful to you for joining us in large number. I could see almost 540 people who had joined us, and there are few which are in a process of joining. So again, as I said yesterday, we are humbled by the response that we have got, and it will be our sincere effort to see to it that we give you value for the time that you are investing with us. So thank you very much, friends, again. And I hand over the proceedings to my colleague Nilay Ray. As I introduced Nilay yesterday, he is the in charge of our product specialist group, and he will be conducting this session on DCRM. Nilay, over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Beer. And now with me, I am having my colleague Aritra, who is specifically working on the zone of dynamic contact resistance measurement, breakers, and GIS related products. So without giving any much introduction, let us go into the details or the depth things. Before going into the depth, I could see in some of you have mentioned that it is getting stuck or something like that. So you can see at the top of your one reconnect button is available in every screen. So if our voice is not clear at your end, so you can reconnect from your side once again by clicking on that reconnect button. Or if majority of you are facing the same problem, we can reset the entire session from our end to take you to a new room automatically. So if that is the thing, we can do that. So if majority of the people are having the same problem, we can reconnect. Now, as I can see that AV is now clear or something like that, so we can go on. And if you are having facing the problem of AV or any problem, you can keep it on our chat. You can put the questions also, whatever, if you are having any doubts in your mind, so you can put it in the chat room. You can put the chat in the send to everyone, or you can send it to the admin or to us directly on 1:1 basis. So we can do that. Our people are there, and we will be also taking few of the questions, some selected questions, or if possible all the questions at the fag end of the session. However, you can keep on putting your questions, and our team is available, so they will be responding to you with the name as Scope. So if you are getting the response from Scope, you can understand that our team is answering that one, and that will be the marked as that you can say it as a answer to your questions. So now going to the agenda part of it. Today we will be starting with the basic introduction. Once again, recapping of the breaker, a small just recap which we know for years. So construction part, a little bit construction part and operation, how the breaker operates, what's going on inside while the operation is taking place. Then we'll be talking about how the degradation or the life of the breaker is coming down. Obviously, as we know, the time goes on, the breaker is supposed to get deteriorated, but may not be that much old, but a new breaker can also get deteriorated due to some malfunctioning or some degradation can happen. So if we'll see those degradations and how to understand how those parts identify which part has gone faulty or something like that. We'll be talking what are the health analysis tools available in general, or the major health analysis tools available in the industry as a whole. Then out of those all available tools, we'll be taking one sample case today. The main subject is the DCRM, how the DCRM is, what is the concept, what are the different parts of a DCRM signature, and these things. And we'll be taking one or two case studies, and we'll show you our product Isaac Ultima, which is available from Scope for this DCRM measurement, and followed by the question regarding the PPT and the video. The entire presentation as it is will be available in the same link. In future also, anytime you can click on the same link to come back to this video, and you will be getting the full video. It will be kept online for at least a few time, maybe 15 days or so, or maybe 1 month, that depending upon how is the demand is coming. So you can get that video. We'll be trying to make it forever. If we can download it, we'll be trying out to send it to you, the downloaded link of the video, or the YouTube link of the video that will be seen. And the questions we can take at the end, or we may take some questions in between also. So let's start. So this is just a recap of what used to happen, or what are the different types of breaker. As we think, these are the things which we are knowing from our very initial days of our college life, when we have started our professional journey, or in our professional journey. So we can divide the circuit breakers according to the voltage level or according to the installation. We can do it from the viewpoint of operating mechanism or the arc wind teaching media, and some other types of breakers are also available. So when we are talking about the voltage level, these are high voltage, medium voltage, and low voltage. Similarly, high voltage is consisting of extra high voltage and ultra high voltage that we have not bifurcated purposefully. We have kept only high voltage. According to installation, as we know, outdoor breakers, indoor breakers, or the GIS breakers. According to the operating mechanism, we can divide them based on the something like spring operated or pneumatic operated or hydraulic breakers. According to arc quenching medium, that could be OCBs, old age breakers, air circuit breakers. Once again, the ABCBs are old days, nowadays going out. Practically, it is not available, or it is available. Few pieces are available in some of the utilities. Very old substations are there, and the SF6 circuit breakers and VCBs are there. When it comes to the other types, there are the MCBs, MCCBs, and ELCBs. All are different types of circuit breaker. Now, coming to the majorly, we will not be covering the smaller breakers like MCCB or ELCB. Those things we will not be covering over here today. We will be talking mainly about the high voltage circuit breakers and medium voltage also to some extent, because the medium voltage and high voltage construction is one and practically the same. So in a breaker, as we can see, this is the 400 kV breaker. We are generally having the interrupter, where we may have even the bifurcation of main interrupter and pre-insertion resistor or the PIR contact. Then we might be having the grading capacitor for the balancing out of the voltage distribution between two limbs, two interrupters. Then we are having the operating mechanism. It could be spring, motors, coils, closing coil, tripping coil, oils, whatever is there inside the breaker in the mechanism itself. For operation, it is there. It is not for the MOCB sort of thing. Oil we are talking the oil which is available even in the SF6 breaker. Let's say for the operating mechanism, for the I think you can say quenching, not the quenching medium, but in the operating mechanism we are having the oils, and the air is also available. Then in the chamber we are having the auxiliary contacts, and for SF6 breakers we are having the SF6 gas as an integral part of the breaker. Going next, if we go inside this zone of the porcelain tube, so whatever is available inside the porcelain tube, that we are trying to make a diagram out of this. So right side, extreme right and extreme left, we are having the incoming and outgoing flange. Then we are having the contact holders for fixed contact holder and moving contact holder. Then the contact assembly is there. The left side we have shown the main contact moving part and arcing part. Similarly, on the right hand side we have shown the fixed assembly, fixed part of the breaker. Now this left side and right side, though it is a cross-sectional view, that's the reason it is a bit difficult to understand, but try to visualize this is a three-dimensional thing. The left side, the arcing moving contact, whatever has been shown in the center, that is the male part, and the similar counterpart of the right side, it is the female part. Arcing contact is the female. And in the fixed part, once again, the main contact fixed size is the male, and on the left side, main contact moving is the female. So it is a male-female combination, and when the breaker closes, what happens? This is like this. So one part gets inserted into the other, and the breaker closes. So this is in short how it is the breaker is operating. Now let us see the video to check how the actual operation used to take place. closing spring is charged. Breaker is in off condition. Motor control is in off condition. Now closing operation is taking place, and now breaker has closed. Now motor control became on. Tripping spring automatically got charged. Now breaker is ready for tripping. Now once the breaker is tripping, the closing spring once again gets charged, and as the tripping command comes to the breaker, the opening operation starts and the breaker opens out. Now tripping spring is discharged and the breaker is open. So this is how the breaker operates. Now as I have told you, the male and female contact assembly. As you can see in the left hand side, the fixed contact, whatever we have shown you in the one slide ahead back, is the fixed contact and moving contact as a normal drawing. Now it is the actual picture. As we can see, if we open up the breaker interrupter chamber, this is the things. The left hand side we are having the fixed contact, where the fixed contact is having once again the male female assembly. So in the center, whatever you can see, that male component is the arcing contact, and on the outer side of that ring is the finger like structures, that is the female part of the main contact. In the right hand side we are having the moving part. As we can see, that white part at the top of the figure, topmost right side, it is the PTFE nozzle. So inside that one we are having the arcing female part, and the main contact is the just outside the PTFE nozzle. So this moving part comes forward and gets inserted on the fixed contact. Now here in this video slide, whatever is you can see is the cross section. Once again, only the interrupter part. What happens inside the interrupter when the breaker is going through the close and open condition. Before going into the video or the animation, I want to explain you from the right side, the green part at the outer part, as you can see, that you can consider as the overall porcelain chamber. Inside the porcelain chamber, we are having all the assembly. Now here the left hand side of the thing is the moving contact, and in the right hand side we will be seeing the fixed contact. In the fixed contact, now I will play the video. So once again, I'll show you, and step by step, I'll be taking you through the details. Here, this is the point when the arcing contact is getting separated, arcing is taking place, arcing is generated, SF6 quenching is happening. So this is called as the auto puffer motion of the breaker. Now this is the actual CV contacts. When we can see on the left hand side the two female contacts of the arcing part arcing contacts, female part, and on the right hand side we can see the male contact, a male part of the arcing contact. So at the top right, as we can see, this is the male part, new male part. And what is happening during pitting is, we have heard a lot that pitting used to take place, arcing used to take place, and these are the damaged contact. As you can see at the bottom right part, the picture here, it is the all the pittings has taken place. Similarly, on the left hand side, in the female part, you can see there are lots of pitting has taken place, the burning has taken place due to the arcing. These are the effects, whatever is happening inside the breaker. Now let's say talk about the causes of failure of breaker. What are the reasons for failure? It is the healthiness of contacts, maximum fault current, operating time, minimum pickup voltage, overall travel, all these things. So the healthiness of contact, it is damaging the contact itself. Maximum fault current, if the fault current is too high, so it will obviously damage the contact only. If the operation time is not proper, if the breaker is not giving the proper closing time or proper tripping time, then it is the failure of the mechanism. Generally, due to the mechanism mismatch or due to some problem in the mechanism, it affects the operating time of the breaker. Minimum pickup voltage is another problem. If there are the scheduled lowest voltage at which the breaker should operate, that is called as the minimum pickup voltage. If that is not happening, then generally that is the problem of the closing coil or the tripping coil. If it is not happening due to that at the time of tripping, it is the problem of the tripping coil. So coil is not getting energized properly at that voltage, so we need to change the coils. If this over travel or the travel related issue, then the problem is there in the mechanism or in the contact assembly. The contact assembly is, if it is not properly inserted, then these problems of over travel or lesser travel, either of the things can happen. Coil failure, opening and closing coil, these are the most prone to fail. So as the normal way, coil failure means it will be happening into the coil only. SF6 gas pressure and condition. So obviously it will happen with the SF6, but the leakage, if it is happening, it is on the mechanical failure, we will say, because if there is a leakage or something like that, pressure of the SF6 going down, that means some leakage is happening from somewhere. So it is the SF6 gas related issue or the mechanical issue. Even the SF6 gas condition means if it is the SF6 gas is getting deteriorated, so we need to take care of the gas. We may be required to do the analysis of the SF6 gas, and then we will be going for the, if required, the filtration of the SF6, or we may have to replace the SF6. Contact resistance, increase of the contact resistance, obviously it will be happening into the contact only. And insulation degradation, the general problem, it can happen only in the insulation or the insulating part only. Now, what are the important tests of the circuit breaker? Few of the important tests are CB timing. Few of the important tests I am talking are the most general test which we are doing in the site once the breaker is reaching to the site, because in the OEM's premises or during the type testing, a lot of other tests are getting done. But generally, once the breaker is installed and it is in service condition, we are doing generally maximum the CB timing, along with that pre-insertion register timing if PIR is available, contact travel related characteristics, travel mechanism understanding, coil current characteristics we are checking, dynamic contact resistance measurement we are doing, static contact resistance measurement, capacitance and tan delta for insulation analysis, SF6 gas leakage or tightness of the compartments to check the SF6 leakage or if the SF6 gas pressure is going down, SF6 decomposition and quality checking. So if the decomposition of SF6 is taking place inside the interrupter, we will be getting the other component of SF6, and at that time the quality of the SF6 will go on degrading. One more parameter is the SF6 dew point measurement. So if a breaker is working for the long, we must do the dew point as a normal thing. If the dew point is going bad, means it is coming towards the zero, then it is not desirable. Rather, for a used SF6 gas, if it is coming beyond minus 35 degrees centigrade, then we are asking for to check the action on the SF6 gas. Then we are doing the SF6 gas pressure. We are having the direct pressure gauges installed generally in almost all the breakers and GIS. Then we are having the nowadays testing the partial discharge and vibration testings also sometimes people are doing in the if they are doubting that vibration is too high for this breaker. Because if the vibration is high, then what will happen? The entire structure of the breaker, maybe from the bottom itself, may get erupted. So that is the extreme condition I am talking. So these are the different tests which generally we are doing once the breaker is installed and it is in service in the field. Now let us see how the breaker testing has started. Initially, at the very beginning, as my colleague Mr. Doifure has told, that breaker testing initial days, those drums are there, high-speed ultraviolet oscilloscopes we were using. So these at those times we used to take majorly the timing of the breakers because technology was not that much advanced to get anything more than that. So we were doing majorly the timing test only. During 80s, we have started doing the measurement of coil current and travel traces measurement. So once again, we used to use even the high-speed oscilloscope and the high-speed plotters we used to do to understand the travel characteristics and coil current. Then in late 80s, people have started doing the CRM measurement in very good amount, because though the CRM has started much earlier also, but it became popular in the late 80s. Then in 90s, the DCRM measurement has started coming. The concept of DCRM has started internationally. Now, what is DCRM? DCRM stands for Dynamic Contact Resistance Measurement. So by name itself, something dynamic way, we are doing the contact resistance measurement in some dynamic way. So when the breaker is in movement, during that dynamic condition, we are doing the contact resistance. To start to it, this could be the very easy way to understand. Now, for this, it is first of all, I need not have to open the breaker. It is a non-invasive tool. Without opening the breaker, we can understand the health of the contacts inside the interrupter, as we can understand the condition of a human heart by doing the ECG. So if I am having some heart problem, or if I am having a cardiac arrest, so my ECG will change. Similarly, if there is any problem in the breaker, the DCRM signature will change. So that's the reason we can call it the DCRM as the ECG for the breakers. Generally, the signature of a breaker will change. DCRM signature of a breaker will change only if there is any problem in the breaker, or if something has got changed from its initial condition, then the DCRM signature will change. Actually, during the DCRM analysis, we are taking the signature of change of contact resistance during the CO operation, close open operation. We are taking the close open operation, and during that time, we are taking the continuously contact resistance measurement. So that's the reason it is called as dynamic contact resistance measurement. And ultimately at the end, we are plotting the resistance versus time curve. So the DCRM is giving a lot of information on the contact conditions inside the interrupter without opening the interrupter. It also gives a lot of information on the operating mechanism and linkages, various linkages, whatever is happening from the breaker contact to the linkage to the operating rod up to the operating mechanism. And certain cases we have also seen, it reveals the information about the mechanical weakness, whatever is happening inside the interrupter in the contacts, like contact fingers, contact looseness, even the misalignment of the contact, sometimes the misalignment of the operating rod, some mechanical problem in the operating rod or the linkages. All these informations we are getting during the DCRM measurement. This right hand side we have shown you a typical DCRM signature, where during the DCRM we are taking three things simultaneously. We have to consider majorly three things. One is that the current, whatever we are injecting, that is getting plotted in the blue color, that is starting from TB going up, and at the right it is coming down sharply. So that is the 100 ampere current signature. The green signature, whatever is starting from the top, just beside it is starting from signature of the resistance of contact resistance, that is the high point. It is starting, then suddenly it is coming down with a notch, then almost a smooth curve, then suddenly it is going out when the current is falling down. So this is the resistance curve, and there is one more graph which is starting from TR zone and going up in the red color. That is a travel graph. So if we correlate the travel graph with current and resistance, we will be getting a lot of helpful information about the breaker. Now, taking a bit more time, one more slide on this concept of DCRM. As I was telling, it is directly can be correlated with the ECG of human body or human heart. As we know, each and every person is having a different ECG signature. Each and every person. My father's ECG will not match with me. My son's ECG will not match with me. My wife's ECG will not match with me. My mom's ECG will not match with me. Even my brother or sister's ECG will not match with that of mine. So every human being is having a typical ECG waveform in normal condition. So, and that ECG signature is not supposed to change over a period of time. Reason? There is no change in the heart. Heart is functioning properly. So without opening the heart, we can understand what is the condition of the heart, how it is performing in that fashion. So The ECG of the human will only change only if it is having the any problem. If I am having any problem in my heart, then only my ECG signature will change, otherwise not. Same is the condition for breaker. Each and every interrupter will be having a typical DCRM signature. The two signatures of left and right side of two interrupters of the same make, same breaker might not be same. The nature might be same because they are breaker. They are manufactured by a specific OEM. They are of the same breaker. The nature will match, but exactly point to point it will not match because they are from the different breed. As like though I am one of the child of my parents, still my brother's ECG will not match with me, but the nature will match because we both are human being. And our DCRM signature of a breaker will change the moment there is any problem in the breaker. Now, if we talk about CRM versus DCRM, so static contact resistance measurement is something like the millivolt drop test. It is taken in the closed condition and it is a single measurement. Only a single value of the static contact resistance measurement might be, we are taking 4-5 different iterations of static contact resistance, but it is a single value. It is a mere value. Let's say the contact resistance of a 400 kV breaker is 42 micro ohm. That means it is a pure number. It is a value, a single value. Whereas dynamic contact resistance is, though it is a 1 second millivolt drop test or the VYI, we are injecting a current, we are measuring the voltage drop across the breaker contact, and we are doing the voltage by current to get the resistance. That's the reason it is called as a millivolt drop test. But in the dynamic contact resistance measurement, the breaker is not kept in the static condition. We are giving a close open command to the breaker. So during the CO operation, we are injecting the current, we are measuring the voltage drop, and then we are doing the VYI to get the value of resistance. And at the end, we are plotting the resistance versus time curve, how the resistance is varying over a period of time when the breaker is undergoing the CO operation, close open operation. So this is the basic difference between static contact resistance or the CRM and dynamic contact resistance or the DCRM. Now, when we are talking about the DCRM graph analysis, this is one of the important part for understanding the DCRM signature. As I have told, each and every breaker, each and every interrupter will be having a separate signature. So there are different zones which we can see. As we have marked over here on the travel curve, you can see the different points A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, all these points. And as I have explained you earlier slide in the typical DCRM graph, the same graph we have taken. Additionally, we have shown you the closing coil current at the bottom, the blue, and the tripping coil current, how it has picked up. When the closing coil current is picking up, then only the breaker closing operation will start. So as we can see in the red graph, it is starting from the point A, and then it is tracing. Will be tracing the entire travel graph, and we will be trying to correlate. So first we are giving the closing comment. As soon as we are giving the closing comment, the current pickup will take place into the closing coil from A to B. Though the breaker is not having any mechanical movement, but it is getting ready for the movement because closing coil is getting picked up. And then after the initial pickup, you will see a sudden drop into the closing coil current, because that is the point where the plunger displacement used to take place. And due to this plunger displacement, the current suddenly goes down, and once again is steadily goes rising up. And at that time, immediately after the plunger displacement, the breaker physical movement starts place. So in between AB, if there is no mechanism movement, though it is a straight part, this is the mechanism functioning we can understand in the zone of A to B. Then B to C is the zone where breaker is moving very smoothly or very swiftly from the extreme position to the towards the closing position. So it is the operating mechanism which information we used to get. And as you can see, where we have put the arrow of closing coil current, just before coming down, there used to the auxiliary changeover of the closing coil will take place. But the breaker movement will not stop at that moment, because breaker has already got the enough momentum to reach and close the breaker or close the contacts. So from B to C, in between somewhere, the closing coil energization will be removed, but breaker will keep on going on autopilot, something like with its own inertia it will move. And at the point in somewhere in C, breaker has first touched. So moving part of the breaker has just touched the fixed part. And that's the reason, as you can see, the blue current curve, current has jumped from 0 to the top 100 ampere value. The reason, the moment it got physically contact, the current started flowing. And at the same moment, as you can see from the top, the green curve has started coming down. And initially in that green graph, there are some glitches, or the ups and downs are observed. And then once again, after the point D, the resistance has further fallen down, and at the point somewhere from the E onwards, it became almost at the lower level. So up to the point E or the C to D, it is the zone where the arcing contact has touched, but main contact has not yet touched. So in between C to D, that arcing contact has first touched, then there will be a swipe of arcing contact, then the main contact will touch. And as the main contact has touched, the resistance will further fall down, and the main contact insertion will take place, and breaker will go to the total resting position. So from after the point E, as you can see in the travel also, the breaker movement has practically stopped, or there is practically no movement. So the moment, if we compare the travel and resistance curve, we can easily understand when the breaker travel has also stopped, the resistance change has also stopped. So it reveals that the breaker contact is healthy. If there would be any loose contact or loose finger contact into the assembly, either in the main contact or in the arcing contact, even after the travel has stopped, still those will be vibrating because breaker has traveled a lot at high speed. The weight of the breaker assembly for a 400 kV breaker, the moving contact will be around 200 kg. The 200 kg mass is moving at a speed of 10 to 15 meter per second. A huge speed, 60 kilometer per hour or 66 kilometer per hour. In that speed it is going. So in that high speed, when it is touching the main contact, there will be a huge vibration. And if the contact by any chance is loose, they will be vibrating heavily during that zone. So even after the point E, if there is any loose contact, we will be seeing the resistance is going up and down, up and down. Many of the people might have seen this sort of graph in your substation, in your breaker. So now you can correlate that, yes, I have seen this. If you have not seen the resistance changes or the jitters in the resistance curve after the point E, but in between the point C and E. So what has happened in between that zone, there might be the arcing contact is having the vibration, or there is some problem in the arcing contact. Might be there are the lots of pitting has happened because arcing contact, all the arcing used to take place. The resistance of the arcing contact is not uniform. So if it has cleared some of the heavy faults, it might have developed a lot of pittings. So there could be a lot of jitters in the resistance curve in that zone. Once after the travel has completed, we are allowing the breaker to get rested for some time, to get settled. So E to F is the settling zone, we can say. E to F is the settling period, where we are allowing the breaker to get settled down. So whatever the vibration and other things, all the movements will be over. So this is we are recommending a lot of other utilities, big utilities. They are also following a standard to allow around 300 millisecond in this time. That is called as the settling time. So that settling time will reveal the resistance as it can be compared directly with the static contact resistance measurement. So some of the people are asking, can I get the value of static contact resistance measurement, static contact resistance during the DCRN? Yes, we can get the lowest point of this smooth zone, the lowest part of the DCRN is nothing but revealing the information of your CRN. So you can jolly well take it, the same value as a static contact resistance method. And then from point F onwards, once again, the breaker movement is starting. It is because we have given the open command also. So breaker starts opening. So F to G, once again, the trip command has come. The trip coil mechanism will start acting. The plunger displacement will take place after the point G. Once again, you can see there is a current dip in the trip coil, same like closing coil. But trip coil is, as the trip timing is much lesser than the closing time, so the mechanism movement will be very fast. That also is getting reflected from the travel curve itself. The inclination of the travel curve, you can see between B to C and I to J, it is totally different. So the speed of the breaker is much higher during the tripping. So in between G to H, the main contact has withdrawn. So here, once again, you will be getting the similar type of graph as we have got between E to D or D to E. So D to E, whatever information I will be getting, the same information I am supposed to get in the G to H, because that is the main contact closer, and here it is the main contact withdrawal. So it should be similar sort of a graph or replica. Then we will be having the arcing contact withdrawal in between H to I, which is similar to between the point C to D, because there also the arcing contact informations we have got. Here also the arcing contact information. And after I, the operating mechanism, I to J, the operating mechanism condition we have understood. The tripping, during tripping, how the operating mechanism is operating. So this is, in short, how and what are the different information a DCRM can reveal to one person. There is a question by Mr. Dheeraj Chaudhary. We generally keep TCO, that is the delay time between closing and opening, as 300 milliseconds for DCRM. Will there be any problem in signature if we keep a value of 200 milliseconds? So here there won't be any problem. The thing is like that, this is the settling time we are allowing. The settling time of the breaker between the closing and once again starting of the operating mechanism movement. So if I am reducing that, the in between zone, that is between point of E to F, will get reduced. And if I reduce is too much, what will happen? I will not be allowing the breaker to get settled down. It is not problematic for the breaker, but I may miss some of the information. That's the reason we are giving a general standard thumb rule that we are following around 300 milliseconds, because if there is any problem, if some vibrations are there in the closing zone, that takes maybe around 150 milliseconds or so to get settled down, as per our experience, as we have seen. So in that time, if there is any problem, let it get settled. Then still we are having some more time. Then we are starting the next movement. So if the time is reduced and if there is any vibration or the problem in the breaker, so what will happen? We will not be able to understand that the vibration has came or the resistance change has affected due to the closing operation vibration or the operating mechanism or the opening. That is the thing only. It can happen, nothing else. Now, how it could be helpful? Let us talk about some case studies. How people got benefited. Instead of talking theoretically, let us share you some couple of case studies where you will be able to understand how the people got benefited. This case we came in front of us a few years back. It was the result. Our customer has taken on of the biggest utility of India, one of the reputed utility in India. They were testing their breaker, which was commissioned in 1997, a quite old breaker. It was controlling a bus reactor. The breaker was in service for almost 8 years, and it has undergone about 1400 operations during its 8-year long service. So during testing, they have seen, they were comparing, as I was telling, the nature of the breaker, nature of the resistance curve should be similar. So they have suspected the right side resistance as something problematic, because all the other poles, healthy poles, are giving the similar result as shown in the left hand side graph. So the healthy pole signature is present, as you also can understand. There is some problem on the, appears to be something different in the right hand side thing graph. So they decided to open the breaker, and ultimately after opening, what are the informations they have got? The moving arcing contact was found decept and got expanded. So due to the heavy arcing and these 14 years, 1400 operations, fault clearing, and other things. So it has got a good shock, good you can say heat treatment and other things. So it got decept and got a bit expanded. Even the PTFE nozzle of the moving contact assembly was a bit slightly, a small crack was got developed. As you can see in the right hand side picture, there is a small black mark at the top. That is the actually crack what they have observed in the PTFE nozzle. One of the counter head screw of the moving main contact assembly was loose, though it was only after opening it could be observed. And due to that, there are lots of scratches also happening into the main moving contact. As you can see in the left bottom image, there are lots of yellow and black scratches immediately after the PTFE nozzle. So those are the scratches are available. So they have replaced the necessary parts, and they have got the signal rectified. The second case, let us take, it was from another utility. It was a tie bay breaker. One fine day, they have noticed during their periodic testing schedule, they could see the signature is not proper, or it was as like the earlier one. And the most critical thing which customer has noticed, that the travel graph, the red one, is smooth from the very beginning, but almost after reaching to the end, it is having a dip. And same is the case, it is happening at the time of opening also. So it clearly indicates that there is some problem in the travel mechanism, because travel graph is generally smooth, it cannot come back. So it depicts that breaker is going up, it is closing, suddenly it has come back. It cannot happen like that. Something is wrong. And similarly, as we can see, the resistance graph has also shown a lots of jitters, up down, those things. So based on the travel graph majorly, as well as the thing, they have understood that there is some problem in the driving mechanism or the travel, and they decided to open the breaker. And they have seen the bottom seal rod was not properly fitted, or it became loose, and during the operation it got opened up. So it was not properly going up and down, and that's the reason the travel graph has shown that sort of a nature. They could also found loose Allen bolt of coupling piece, and the alignment was also not proper, as the alignment got damaged because this operating drive bottom seal rod has got opened, the alignment got disturbed, and the Teflon nozzle got totally damaged. As you can see in the picture, there are lots of cut marks because it was getting heated by the moving part. So it was about to fill, but the DCRM signature has revived. So they have changed the things, and travel problem got rectified in this, as we can see in this curve after the rectification. But however, the DCRM signature got improved, though there are some bounces, but they decided, as they have opened the breaker and they could not found any problem as such, so they have understood, okay, let it be in this fashion, because it might be the nature, because they are not having any earlier signature to compare. So this was in the first shot itself, when they have tested, they could find out the reason. So even with the first testing, with your experience, you can understand there is a problem in the breaker. And if you are having the trend of that breaker, the initial signature, then after taken at the time of the manufacturing, then after installation of the breaker, and so on. If you are having the trend of the breaker signature, this DCRM signature, then you can easily understand how good this tool could be for you. Now another case where this was the signature of all the phases. As you can see, in the R and B phase, there is almost good graph. But in the Y phase, the graphs are totally haywire. We cannot understand what's happening. Though the travel appears to be okay, current is getting established, but DCRM signature is not at all proper. The resistance curve, the green curve, is not at all proper. So they have opened up and they checked everything inside the breaker. They could not find any problem. Then they come down and they could find out the problem is at the Y at the bottom. Actual setting of the breaker was wipe of the bottom was supposed to be in between 19 to 20 mm, whereas the actual wipe at the bottom was reduced and it has reduced to 12 mm, and that's the reason the Y phase resistance curve was going high, because it was not getting inserted properly. So practically it was just touching the thing. So it is not only the breaker internal information of the interrupter, it is not only the information of the main contact and the pin contact. DCRM also gives the result of the external mechanism. If something goes wrong in the mechanism, even if you can find out with the things, and they have corrected this wipe settings, and after doing the rectification, they could get a clean graph as expected, and it was matching with the other two poles, R and R and B phases. So it is clearly understood that DCRM is a very, very good tool to understand the healthiness of the breaker, not only for the arcing contact or the main contact resistance, but also it is revealing a lot of information on the mechanical part also, even on the mechanism. So now coming to a small part, this is the instrument which Scope is manufacturing. It is the 6-channel dynamic contact resistance measurement. We are proud to announce across the globe, Scope is the first company to develop multi-channel DCRM. The other benefits and other things are there, lots of benefits, because if we want to talk about the product, it may take I can talk on full day. But this is not the platform where we can talk in the limited time. So I'll request, if you are interested to know further on this product, you can contact us. We can even given the demonstration and any other query on the product specific point, we can talk in a separate platform. However, this is a very good single instrument to test any type of breaker. We are having the dedicated 6-channel DCRM in a single instrument, so that you can test up to 400 kV breakers in a single go. With the pass-fail limit setting, you can create the circuit breaker library, and you can have the trolley mounted structure. And as the testing is very swift, a 400 kV breaker can be tested in a jiffy. Just in a single shot, you can test all the DCRM of all the interrupters, of all 6 interrupters in a single test. So that downtime of your breaker testing time will be very low, and as a result, you can save a lot of your revenue. Now I am almost at the end of my presentation. So as a conclusion, you can say DCRM test It is a non-invasive diagnosis tool, very powerful, and it has proved for circuit breakers, and it is giving a lot of internal information of the main contact, arcing contact, erosion, misalignment, looseness, breaker mechanism problem, and all sorts of more lot of other details. Prevention of major failures can be averted. Major failures can be averted by doing a proper preventive maintenance, by doing a proper diagnosis on a regular basis. And major overhauling of the breaker or interrupters or arcing chamber can be scheduled based on the information whichever we are getting from the DCRM. And last but not the least, this is a piece of information we wish to share. Though being the pioneer from the India, but our Indian people are now steering the committee in IEC to make DCRM as a IEC standard. So DCRM measurement will be coming very soon as a IEC standard. So this is as far as from the presentation side of it, whatever we wanted to tell you on these things. Now we'll be taking a few of the questions. So I will invite my colleagues, Mr. Aritra and Mr. Bala Sahib, to come online so that we can take up the questions.
Yeah, Nile. So we have many questions. Some of them are answered in real time. Some of the ones which are probably worthy or of interest to common audience, maybe we can take those questions which will be of benefit to a larger audience. So first question was from Anil Raj. The resistance of CB will be same in CRM and DCRM. If not, then please explain. I believe, Nilay, you spoke about this particular thing in the last part of your conversation. Yeah. So basically, what a straight line you see at the bottom of the DCRM graph represents your static contact resistance measurement. Of course, a standalone static contact resistance meter is supposed to measure the contact resistance more accurately compared to DCRM, because in DCRM we are taking high speed samples. We are taking samples at 20 kilohertz or 10 kilohertz. In short, we are taking samples every 50 microseconds. So the capability of a DCRM is to have a fast sampling when circuit breaker is in dynamic state, that is when it is operating. However, approximately with a few microns here and there, you will be getting more or less similar resistance if you correlate the resistance of a static contact resistance meter and the resistance of that straight line bottom graph that you get. But of course, in DCRM signature, as was informed earlier, what is important is the signature and not the value. And we monitor the change in signature by using some of the software features which are available in the instrument, like compare DCRM graph, where you can superimpose multiple signatures taken at different time, and you can visibly see if there is any change in the signature, so that you can assess the health of the circuit breaker. So this was one question. There's another question from Mr. Chandan Singh. What is the linkage ratio in contact travel, and why it is different for different manufacturers, and also why it is different for linear and rotary transducers? So linkage ratio is a ratio of travel at the operating mechanism level and at the contact level. You may see that at the operating mechanism level the contact is 130 millimeters, whereas the actual contact travel can be 200 millimeter. So here the linkage ratio is 200 millimeters by 130 millimeters. So this is what is called as a linkage ratio. and this linkage ratio depends on the design of the circuit breaker. So naturally, it varies from design to design. What your travel transducer sees is essentially the travel of a mechanism, whereas what you are interested to correlate with the DCRM signature is the travel of a contact. That's why we need to put this particular linkage ratio into the software when you are carrying out the DCRM test, so that all the values that you get are correlated with the contact travel and not correlated with the operating mechanism travel. Because when we talk about DCRM, we are talking more about the contact travel. And of course, this is different for the linear and rotary, and it is also different within the linear motion from breaker design to design. But these linkage ratios are generally available with the manufacturer, and I mean, most of the people now are aware because the DCRM they are conducting for quite some time. So this is about the linkage ratio and why it is different from breaker to breaker. There is one question from Chinmaya Raut. What is the difference between arcing contact and main contact? I believe Nilay had shown the pictures of the main contact and arcing contact. Maybe Nilay, if you can just bring on the picture or that particular slide, we can explain again.
Yeah, but I'm trying to bring it back.
Yeah, right. See, the main difference is a circuit breaker is having this main contact and arcing contact in a parallel as a single assembly. The job of the main contacts is to carry the current when you are, when the circuit breaker is closed condition and offer minimum resistance. Whereas when the circuit breaker trips and when the arcing takes place during the trip operation, circuit breaker contacts also see a large exposure to the heat which is getting generated there. And for the arcing contacts, we need to have a material composition which will withstand that high temperature. So generally, the arcing contact is a composition of copper with tungsten or graphite, so that during the tripping operation, whatever is the heat generated because of the tripping, that is withstood by the arcing contact. So slightly different purposes. Yeah, now you can see it here. So Nilay, if you can move the cursor on the main contact and the arcing contact. So here you can see the main contact has typically a copper and chromium or silver alloys, whereas the arcing contact, as I said, will be graphite or tungsten. So that's why different purposes to be performed by these two contacts, and they are part of the single assembly of the circuit breaker. One more thing I would like to highlight at this particular point is when you take the contact resistance by using a static contact resistance meter, at that time your both moving contact and fixed contact, they are both in permanently engaged condition. That means your main contact as well as arcing contact are in fully inserted condition. And in that condition, since the main contacts are having much lesser resistance compared to the arcing contacts, eventually what reflection you get is of the main contacts. So in static contact resistance measurement, the healthiness of the main contact is reflected. If your arcing contact is suppose significantly worn out, and if your main contact is good, in a CRM measurement you will still get a good contact resistance. So that is where the inadequacy of the CRM is there, and where the role of DCRM is there. That if the arcing contact is worn out, there is a high contact resistance, it is becoming bad, that will get reflected only in the dynamic contact resistance, that is DCRM test, and not into the CRM test. So I believe I had answered the question.
Yeah.
This another question: why, while measuring the resistance using DCRM, does the kit cable resistance also comes into the picture? A good question, and many times this confusion prevails. In case of DCRM, or for that matter CRM, or for that matter any low resistance measurement, we typically use 4-wire method for the measurement of these low resistances. When we say 4-wire, we are using 2 wires or the cables for injection of the current, and we are using 2 wires for picking up the voltage drop. So the points at which we are injecting the current, so the cable resistance of the current cable and the contacts of the circuit breaker, this entire path of the resistance is seen by the current source. So the current will pass through the cable, through the circuit breaker, and come back to the cable, come back through the cable. But when it comes to voltage pickup cables, the voltage pickup cables are sensing the voltage, but the input impedance of our voltmeter, in short, which is there inside the instrument, as for any voltmeter, is very high. So these voltage pickup cables will only look at the voltage drop that is getting generated across the contact. They are not consuming any current within themselves. So since they have very high input impedance, there will be no current flowing through the voltage pickup cables. The voltage drop that is seen at the interrupter level at a height of say 15 meters or 10 meters, the same voltage drop without any pilferage into that voltage drop will be available at the input points of the instrument. So that's why this typically a Kelvin's 4-wire measurement method is used for low resistance measurements. On the other hand, if you see typically the insulation resistance measurement, where the resistance is very high in mega ohms, or in sometimes higher than that. So there the resistance of cable is very small compared to your resistance of the test object. That's why it doesn't matter. So hence we don't use 4-wire method there. We use only 2-wire method there. So that is the difference between why we use 4-wire and why we use 2-wire. So in case of CRM, DCRM, since we are using 4-wire method, the lead resistance of the cables will not come into the picture. However, where the lead resistance will come into picture is your current cables. So suppose, for example, you decide to use some other cables apart from the cables which is supplied by scope. If they are not of a proper cross section, if they are not properly calibrated with the instrument, in that case they may reduce the capability of a current source to inject the current into the circuit breaker. So there will be some other reasons why it is not recommended to use any other test lead set. But as far as this question is concerned, 4-wire method by its nature ensures that the lead resistance is not coming into the picture, because otherwise your breaker contact resistance is in micro ohms, whereas the cable resistance runs into milliohms. So we could get extremely wrong results, but that is not the case. So this is about a question of lead resistance coming into the picture or not coming into the picture. There is one question from Dhruv Apte. Sir, during taking DCRM, the results does not match with CRM. How to determine healthiness of CB in such case? As I explained, generally, the results should be similar. They will not match micron to micron. But if you are getting 50 micron in CRM, okay, you will not get 100 micron in DCRM. So as far as that is the, that particular difference is there, the difference will not be large, because the purposes of the instruments are different. As I said, they carry a different capability. So for the accurate value, we use CRM, but for the signature, we use DCRM. And as I said, DCRM is more for looking at the arcing contact, looking at the linkages and the impact of the problems in the linkages onto the contact movement, and the wear and tear of the main contact as well as the arcing contact. So the results will not be poles apart. They will be more or less, close to each other. And when it comes to the healthiness of the circuit breaker, based on these measurements, as I said, in case of CRM, it may happen that you have a very good result shown because your main contacts are in very good condition. But if your arcing contacts are in not good condition and main contacts are in good condition, you still get good result with the CRM. Whereas in case of DCRM, since you are taking the signature as the contacts travel, you will get the signature of both main contact as well as arcing contact, and that is where you will be able to differentiate with regards to the health of both these assembly parts of the contacts. There is one question from Mr. Gopesh Kumar Jhanjaria. How coil current is helpful in monitoring the healthiness of the coil? It's a good question because coil current or the signature of the coil current that we take reveals few important parameters. Since we are taking the signature of amplitude in amperes versus the time, you typically see in many signatures that the current will start slowly rising, this being an inductive coil, and it at one point when current reaches to a particular point, there may be a little bit of a notch opposite direction, that there is a small drop, and again the current rises, current reaches to a maximum value, current remains flat, and then the current comes down. Now here what is happening is that when you look at the interpretation of this particular signature, this being an inductive coil, current will slowly rise, but when the current reaches to a particular value, the plunger gets displaced. And when the plunger gets displaced, there is a sudden change of magnetic lines of flux being cut by the plunger. That's why you see that drop in the current signature. But then that indicates that that is a point of time when the plunger has displaced, and then it is going to trigger your operating mechanism. And the mechanism is going to then take its own further course, because mechanism operates on its a different way of stored energy, like there can be a pneumatic mechanism or a charged spring or whatever. Coil has nothing to do with that. The moment the plunger displaces and it triggers the operating mechanism, the job of the plunger is over. But then your DC voltage is still being applied to the coil. So coil will draw its rated maximum current, and at one point it will become saturated. And then at one point, when the auxiliary contacts, which are in series with the coil, when they will disconnect the coil, or they will disconnect the voltage that is being applied to coil, at that time the current will start dropping down. So what we understand from this coil current signature are various things. How much is the current that is required for the plunger to get displaced, at what time that event occurs, what is the maximum current drawn by the coil, because that will tell you about the resistance of the coil, because you know the voltage that is being applied, typically 220 volt DC. You also understand at what point the auxiliary contact has operated and has disconnected the coil from the voltage source, because if the auxiliary contact doesn't disconnect the coil, in that case the coil may get damaged, because these are short-term rated coils. They're supposed to carry the current for a particular short time duration. So these are various things which we understand from the coil current signature. It's very important signature. Many times we ignore that signature, but we understand all this information. And it's like about a doctor, like if you get an ECG, maybe a doctor having 5 years experience can extract maybe few things from that. But if you have a more experienced doctor, maybe he will be able to extract much more information from the same signature or ECG than a lesser experienced doctor can do. So it's also about our knowledge about the test object and how we how we are able to extract more and more information from the signatures that we get. So I believe this answers the question with respect to the coil current. Nilay, would you like to take a few more questions? Hi, Nilay, are you there?
I think sir is not there right now.
Okay, let me take the next question in that case. There are questions related to the transducer which are already answered. There was one question where it was asked that the different interrupters are having different signatures, to whether the same interrupter will have a repeatable signature. Now that is the established fact with respect to this measurement, is Even though the different interrupters will have a different signature, even if you take 10 times or 50 times, the same interrupter will give you same signature. And it is these characteristics of the DCRM signature that we are making use of, that it is absolutely repeatable like a signature of yours, unless there is some issue with the interrupter. And that is what we are looking at. If there are variations in the signature, we want to attribute that to a problem that is happening inside the interrupter or with respect to the linkages or the operating mechanism when we correlate that with the travel. There is one question from Sita Ratnakumar. What is the difference between applied DC currents between HVCB and EHVCB? Okay. As far as this question comes up many times, that what should be the test current that should be used for carrying out the DCRM measurement. See, why we require large current is because our test object, that the circuit breaker contacts, are having very low contact resistance. The main contact will be having a resistance in the range of say 30, 40, 50, 60 micro ohms. Whereas the arcing contact resistance, we had seen a wide band for the arcing contact resistance. It can be anywhere from 150 microohms to we had seen even as high as 2 milliohms, 3 milliohms. But typically, let's consider this is in micro ohms. So what is the benefit of the larger current? The larger current gives us larger voltage drop across the contacts. Because if you are injecting 100 ampere in 50 microohms, you will get 5 millivolt drop there. If you apply 200 amperes, you will get 10 millivolt drop there. So larger the drop, easier it is to measure and better is the accuracy of the measurement. But nowadays, with the kind of electronics that we use, we are very easily able to measure the drop of 5 millivolt accurately. So we don't need large current in that case. So it's a trade-off of what is the requirement of the measurement and whether the large current will make any difference to the test object's behavior. Like we are not carrying out any heat resistance test on the test object or on the breaker contacts. If you want to carry out that, then maybe you have to apply a rated current and see how the contact resistance changes after the contacts get heat up. But that is not the objective of DCRM measurement. So it is widely acknowledged and accepted that 100 ampere is the necessary and sufficient current that can be applied. If you go for larger currents, then there are other side effects, like your cable thickness will increase. In that case, if you increase the cable thickness, the weight will increase, the cost will increase. For the EHV circuit breakers, like 765 kV circuit breakers, you need almost 30-35 meter long cable, so that becomes unmanageable. On the other hand, if you use even lesser currents, in that case, the accuracy of the measurement may get impacted. So typically it is 100 ampere, and it is not dependent on the circuit breaker rating. You can use it for any circuit breaker. There was another question related to this, which asked, for what voltage level we should conduct the DCRM test. The answer to that is the DCRM will give you value where you have insertion type of a contacts. If you have a butt type of a contacts, like you have a contacts in a vacuum circuit breaker, there is no separate main contact, arcing contact, insertion of the main contact contacts and arcing contact. It is just a contact, a butt type of a contact, which is held together by a certain spring pressure. So there, what value you will get in a CRM is exactly what you will get in DCRM as well. In DCRM, you will simply get open circuit, short circuit, the contacts are closed, and there is a flat curve you will get at the bottom of the signature. And when contacts open, you get again a maximum resistance or open circuit. So when it comes to the vacuum circuit breakers, CRM, DCRM is one and the same. So DCRM adds value where you have an insertion type of a contact. So wherever you have insertion type of a contacts, typically 66 kV and above, a DCRM measurement will give you the value over and above the CRM test. So this is my answer to that question. I think Neela, you are back. Any more questions you would like to take? We are beyond our time limit, I believe.
Yeah, it's okay. You have practically covered all the questions. So thanks for the same. So
If audience is still there, then we can take a couple of more questions. Let's glance through if there is any other. There is a question: why we use sampling speed of 10 kilohertz for DCRM measurement? Well, the answer to that is the crux of the DCRM measurement is happening in a zone where your circuit breaker, when it is, whether it's a closing or opening operation, when the main contacts are withdrawing, arcing contact is there in the picture, and arcing contact is also withdrawing. So that process happens in 3 to 4 milliseconds. So if you want to reconstruct what is happening during that period, you need to have a larger sampling speed. So larger the samples we have, we are able to reconstruct that particular situation or a happening in a graphical form. So typically we use, rather nowadays everywhere we are using 20 kilohertz as a sampling speed for taking the DCRM signature. 10 kilohertz was earlier being used when the analyzers were having maximum speed of only 10 kilohertz. But now you have analyzers which are giving 20 kilohertz, so that can be used. Again, it's a trade-off. Somebody can say then why not 100 kilohertz? Well, 100 kilohertz is okay, but in that case there are a lot of other side effects in terms of the data size, in terms of the graph length, in terms of the value that you get, because by increasing the sampling speed further you may not get any additional value as such. It will be only the repetition of the available signature, that's it. So it's again a trade-off, and industry has accepted that 10 kilohertz, 20 kilohertz is the ideal sampling speed at which we should be carrying out the DCRM measurement.
there is one question from Mr. Sujit Raut, who has written, we have a 220 kV CB having DCR fluctuations for some instances, even after moving contact final settlement after a close command. All other test values are normal. Is then there any problem? So, sir, here what we'd like to tell you that if you can share us the graph which you have got, so based on that it will be easier for us to explain you the exact thing, because there could be some problem, but without looking at the exact DCRM signature, it will be a bit difficult for us to comment, or it may not be commented rightly. So I would like to tell you to send the email to our ID, which is shown on the slides. So there you can make it. So it is marketing@scopetnm.com. There you can put it. You can mark it to me or Mr. Doife. Address to any of them. We will get the same. There is one more question by Mr. Jay Patel. If transducers are not fixed properly, then any chance of effect on DCRM? Actually, sir, if transducer is not fixed at all, still also DCRM will not be having any problem. Or if the transducer is not fixed properly, DCRM will not be having any problem, because DCRM signature is DCRM signature. We are fixing the transducer to get the exact correlation of the DCRM signature at what moment it is happening. So during closing, at what position of the breaker it is happening, in that fashion. So transducer is required for the travel characteristics, and if we have the travel characteristics, we can correlate the DCRM signature in a much better way. That is the application of the transducer or application of the travel. So from that angle, transducer we are recommending, or people are using also for the travel graph. Transducers are used. If you are not having the transducer, or if you are not attaching the transducer, or if transducer is not properly attached, so either of the cases there won't be any problem in the DCRM graph, but you will not be able to correlate the things properly. That will be the only problem, no other problem as such. So, any other question, Orithro, you want to take, or BR, you want to take, or else we can close the session.
I think we have covered most of the questions.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there are some specific questions. Maybe we can even answer them one-on-one as well. There are some questions related to if one channel is not working, can I take the DCRM signature on the other channels? Of course, we can take it. These are absolutely isolated channels, so it can be taken. Absolutely not an issue. I will just add a couple of sentences on the earlier question, Neela, where you asked for the signature. Of course, unless we have a signature in front of us, we won't be able to really comment much on that. But this happens, because if I understood the question correctly, I mean, even after the contact travel has come to an end, there are variations in the signature, and why it is that was a question. So it is mainly happening because you are measuring the travel at the operating mechanism level, because you are mounting the travel transducer at the operating mechanism level. Whereas beyond that, you have the linkages, and then you have a contact movement. So sometimes we had seen a disengagement of some of the fasteners or couplers between the operating mechanism and the contacts. So there was a case study which we have not shown today, but that was typically a case study where there was a disengagement, and that's why operating mechanism has come to a standstill, but the contacts are still oscillating, and then you get the variation in the contact resistance. So if you have such graph, it will be interesting to have a look on that, and maybe we can comment on that. And if there is something with respect to the breaker that needs to be attended to, maybe something can be done about that. So that is my response as far as just addition as far as that question is concerned. So I believe if there are any pending questions, we will be coming. We will be answering to them separately. You have our email IDs on the screen. Whatever questions you have or whatever information additionally you seek from us, whether it's a technical, product related, or commercial, we will be very happy to respond to you. Thank you very much again for the overwhelming participations and putting so many questions to us. DCRM in itself is a workshop that we conduct for 2 days. So we know that covering that in 90 minutes is not easy.
Quite a job.
Yeah, quite a job. But the kind of questions that are put forward also gives us a lot of insights about how we should be conducting these sessions in future. Some of the questions that I see that these questions are coming from users, and the answers of that are available there in the manual. So I'd also request you to have a look at the manual, and you will get the answers for many questions in the manuals as well, which are related to the setting, which are related to the setting of the instrument, or some of the precautions that are required to be taken during the measurement. So with this, I think we will close this particular session. Thank you very much for your time, your participation. The third session in this particular webinar series that we are conducting will be on Monday, and tomorrow we have off, so we can enjoy Sunday. So on Monday, Nile, we have what on partial discharge we are going to talk?
We are having partial discharge.
Okay, so partial discharge again, one more very exciting measurement, and I'm sure there will be a lot of questions on the partial discharge. The measurement, which again requires a lot of expertise in analyzing the data and signature. So friends, see you on Monday. Until then, thank you very much and goodbye from Scope team.